It's really important for us to get top 2. The only tough opponent is going to be H2k.
Starting off the board, Fnatic versus H2k.
The first time we met them, we lost.
They're going to jump on him, but he's going to jump on his steel back, and he just blew him right up. That's going to open a dragon up for Fnatic. Oh, huge Timber stun, and that is going to be Fnatic getting the turnaround. Huni, unstoppable.
It's important because we have a rivalry with Fabian. I don't really mind who I'm playing against. It doesn't matter for me at all.
And there's Lulex going down for Bivin, picking up the kill. H2k offering absolutely no resistance. GG, Fnatic.
So now we are really looking forward to win. It's gonna be a great match.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the European League Championship Series, coming to you live from Berlin, Germany. We're about to embark on the final week of the regular season play in the spring split. Just moments ago, we saw the fans getting underway here. They are hyped as always before they came into the studio. They got their signs, they got their smiles, and they are ready to go. A Huni fan, I think there are a lot of those in the crowd every single week. And there's Rocket looking quite cheery, actually, and energetic going into their very first game. They know they need to win versus the Copenhagen Wolves, and there they are, the Wolves themselves, also setting up on stage already. Dentist behind them, giving them some motivational words before they get into that game that is so important. I'm Evie Shoksupporter, and joining me to kick off the last 10 games before the spring playoffs is caster for the European Challenger Series, James Stress O'Leary, and our very own Trevor Quickshot Henry. Welcome, gentlemen, and welcome, Stress, the very first time at the desk.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here on the big stage here at LCS, and you know, we just wrapped up our Challenger round robin yesterday, and excited to see how the end of the EU LCS Spring Split group stage is going to be as well.
Glad you mentioned it. You wrapped up your regular season of the Challenger Series yesterday. Means you'll be going into the playoffs fairly soon. Can you walk us through what have been the main events? What are the teams that are going into the playoffs?
Yeah, it's been quite a crazy round robin overall. We've had teams going 8-0, 0-8, and coming into the last week, there was still a lot on the line. But we finally have 4 teams remaining that are going to be fighting for those potential 3 spots in the LCS. As you can see, we got 2 semifinals that are going to be taking place this week. First up, it's going to be Lowland Lions against Gamers 2 on the Tuesday in a best of 3, and then Wednesday, Origin X-Peke's team that everybody is talking about will be facing off against Team Dignitas Europe to try and get themselves into that grand final spot.
Yeah, that all starts at March 31st, and I believe the finals are on April the 8th, and it will actually be right here in the studio. And if you want to get tickets for that and check out the schedule, everything you need is over on lolesports.com, and it's going to be a blast. They do some crazy things in the Challenger Series.
I learned yesterday that Timo is a legit pick and can win games.
Yep. 100% win rate in the Challenger Series, never forget. But we're going to turn it back to the LCS now, as we are also almost in our playoffs, the very last week of games. And last week we saw a huge meta shift with 5.5 coming in and just so much versatility across the board.
It was really exciting to see. 5.5 did introduce Cinder Hulk, of course, which meant tank junglers, the rise of the era. There was a lot of questions going in. How many teams would adopt it? What would we actually be seeing? And when we break down the numbers, there was 48 unique picks or bans over the course of Week 8 in the LCS. It's a 25% increase over weeks 1 through 7 on average. So that is a massive, massive improvement in a scene where the pro levels tend to stick to a relatively, smaller champion pool. The thing that I particularly like with a tank in the jungle, the option for tanks in the top lane, it meant that you had these longer games, these drawn-out matches, and it was interesting seeing all of these new and unique champions for the first time.
Yeah, and it's not only the tanks that are starting to come back. Alongside that, we're seeing the re-emergence of the hypercarry AD carries, the late-game scaling, the tank busters, if you'll have it, down in that AD carry role. We're seeing a lot of them come back in. Who's going to be the teams that are going to be picking up the wins with that? Who's going to struggle to adapt to that change?
We'll see. You mentioned those late game AD carries. We have the tanks, some newly very popular picks, or Sejuani, Nunu, Hecarim, Jinx, Kog'Maw, Janna, Nami. Walk us through the kind of comps we've seen in the last week and how these champions fit in.
Yeah, there has been a lot of changing around in the metas. We've already alluded to double tanks. There's a couple of picks that you can rely on coming up a lot more. The Kog'Maw, we're going to expect that a lot when Lulu is available. I don't actually expect really at any point that both of those are going to be together. Deficio and I have been talking a lot about that, and that's a really strong combination here that a lot of teams, I have a feeling, are going to ban out.
Yeah, it was also interesting to see that despite the fact that the LCS regions were 5.5, LCK, LPL running older patches 5.4, they also suffered that craziness that we've seen in recent weeks. I'm hoping it continues. We got some of the most exciting, most interesting games we've had all year long during the last week, and we can only hope for more.
Exactly, and one of the weapons at the disposal of the teams here is Bard. He is enabled this week. I know you are particularly fond of him. Trevor, do you think we'll see Bard popping up here?
No. I think quite bluntly, no. You know, we've talked to a lot of teams, we've talked to a lot of pros, especially in the support role. They just feel that Bard is, you know, has a lot of tools, but master of none. Fairly low in the damage, fairly low in the utility. If you wanted to have certain things, you can get them from other champions. So yes, Bard is enabled. Do I expect to see him? No.
Yeah, I'm along the same lines. I really like his kit in theory. He's a little bit weak at the moment when it comes to his laning presence, and then you have to roam. It's quite difficult to get him into the game. I think if there's any outside chance, it might be a team like Elements with a support player like Krepu who loves to roam. We may see him in one game, but I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, we'll see. In any case, the teams have a ton of things to work with going into this final week. And with the postseason just around the corner, we got to take a look at the playoff picture and how things stand before we kick off the games today. As we know already, SK Gaming, Fnatic, H2k, Gambit, and the Unicorns of Love have locked in their spot in the playoffs. That means one spot remaining. And Trevor, I heard you saying on PTL, you think it's going to be the Wolves.
I'm going to go further and say I know it's going to be the Wolves. I know it's strong, but if you look at the standings, they've got an extra win. Yes, they play Rocket in the first game of the week, but then they play Giants on Friday. These are two matchups that Copenhagen Wolves should have in the bag. I feel that they are the smarter team. They've got more to work with, and with Youngblood having options in the top lane for tanks, I definitely think they have the tools at their disposal. It is obviously going to hinge on beating Rocket. As long as they do that straight out the gates, that's it. That's your sixth playoff team.
Yeah, and it's not only the sixth playoff team that's highly contested. Down at the bottom side of the table as well, we've got that fight for who is going to be automatically relegated to Challenger. And when you look at the likely replacement, I think everybody is saying, Origin are looking so good. It looks to be like quite a significant skill replacement when you compare the two sides.
Yeah, we will see how that plays out here today. So let's take a look at the schedule because we'll have a much clearer picture of everything after the first game today. But that means we do have to play 5 games here today. We're going to start everything off with Copenhagen Wolves versus Rocket, which is a huge game. Immediately, Rocket, they have no choice. They have to win or they're out of the playoffs. What are you guys especially looking forward to?
You know, if you look at the entire day's games, I feel game 1 is in the bag in the Wolves, so I'm actually looking at game 2, H2k versus Fnatic. This is the battle for second place at the top of the table. There are some outlier cases where if SK loses, one of these teams could take first. I'm not expecting it. What I'm interested to see is how these teams perform. I think H2k is a smarter team than Fnatic. Fnatic is a more aggressive team. And you compare their records, 9 wins, 1 loss for H2k in the last 10. 7 wins, 5 losses for Fnatic. So the team that's in recent form, I think H2k have the edge.
That's an interesting battle for second, but I'm more interested in the battle for that 5th, 6th spot, which we're going to find out in the last game of today. Unicorns of Love versus Gambit. Not only is it important for the seeding, it's also going to be a playoff preview. And these two teams are very highly likely to be meeting each other in the playoffs, in the first round. And it's going to tell us exactly how these two teams stack up going into those playoffs. And the team that really isn't quite stacking up yet, at the bottom side of the table, Elements. We have to see whether they fix their issues. They've had a lot of roster swaps throughout the season. Can they finally get themselves, at least a spot to stay in the LCS?
It's so weird, right? You look at Elements last week. They took down H2k. They stopped the win streak. They broke the #1 team from Europe. And then they drop a game to Gambit where they were absolutely obliterated. So I'm interested to see whether they can pull it up. There is a chance Elements can make it into playoffs, but it is very slim and it's reliant on Wolves and Rocket and some fidgeting of the numbers.
Yeah, basically everyone has to try and get a 2-0 here this week. There's a ton on the line, and I'm sure you guys have a thing or two to say as well. And we want to know what you think, so tweet at us the answer to the question, which team do you think is the most prepared for the spring playoffs and why? And you know the drill, tweet at LOL Esports esports, use that hashtag LCS, and we will answer those questions later in the show. For now, though, it's time to look at two teams fighting for the last spot in the spring playoffs, the Copenhagen Wolves and Roccat. Copenhagen Wolves are 7-9, Roccat are 6-10. And as said, Roccat, they have to win or they are out of the playoffs. And the Copenhagen Wolves, they also have to win to keep control of their own destiny, which is, of course, what you always want. Let's start by taking a look at that lineup for the Copenhagen Wolves: Youngbuck, Airwax, Soren, Freeze, Unlimited, and Dentist. If we look at what we've learned from them on their performance, it hasn't been that good. They went 1-3 in the last couple of games and 0-2 specifically last week. And for me, Airwax especially left something to be desired, picking that Fizz 2 times in a row, and it didn't really bring anything for him.
You know what? I think that's fair. And I think when you actually brought this up with us in the office earlier in the week, we looked at Airwax as a jungler and compared him in his recent performances over the last couple of weeks. This is a guy who played 8 games on Jarvan and actually had some very impressive stats. 75% kill participation, a decent, GPM. The problem is that's 8 games out of 16. The other 8, he's played 1 champion in every match. So he's gone through another 8 different champions. Lower KBA, kill participation, lower gold per minute, and lower impact in the game. Airwax has not been able to contribute to Youngbuck's laning or Soren's laning, and I feel that's why the Wolves have started losing in the back half of the split. But I think a little bit more time, stable patch, tanks favoring Youngbuck, this could be the week that can bounce back.
Yeah, and this is the moment to step up. If we take a step back and look at the bigger picture for the Wolves, they've actually done pretty well in the middle of the season. They actually went on a run for a couple of games as well, but this is where they have to pull it together. They have to beat Roccat. Let's take a look at their opponents on the red side: Overpow, Jankos, Nukeduck, Woolite, Vander, and Ducky. And the story of Roccat is, frankly said, a very underwhelming story. This split, they've said, we want to be second or top 2, we want to be top 3, we want to make the playoffs, and they had to lower their expectations. Cyanide had a very harsh statement about them, but might be reality. He said, Roccat, they have subpar laners in every lane. As said, a little bit harsh, but a lot of times it's been reality in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And although it's quite harsh just to hear on its own, when you put that alongside the games and their performances, Roccat are a side that coming into this split, all the hype was on Nukeduck. Everybody was saying about, man, Nukeduck's going to really destroy all of the mid laners. We've got a load of good mid laners, but Nukeduck, he's one of the best. That didn't really show up. The top lane, Overpower, was new to the role. Jankos hasn't lived up to his First Blood master that we saw all of last season. And a player like Woolite coming onto the roster who should now be comfortable on these hyper carries, that's the style he wants to play. Roccat didn't play to him last week. Can they play to him in these final 2 games? Yeah,
and they have to. With the double tank meta, if they can get some, strong frontline from Jankos and Overpower, buy some time for Woolite, I think the possibility is there, but Woolite just needs to fix his positioning. It's been shocking all split long. Just very quickly, I want to hit on the fact that the Wolves, as a team, something Deficio said a few times, they're a solid middle-of-the-pack team. They lose to teams above them. They beat teams below them. This is a matchup where they're playing a team below them. In theory, they should be able to take it.
In theory, they should indeed. We'll see how that one plays out. Now, as we've seen this season, a roster full of top-tier talent isn't enough to carry a team to victory. And according to Youngbuck, it all comes down to a squad synergy and coordination.
A lot of people always focus on looking who the best players are, but they don't really look at the synergy, and Roccat is a very good example of that. On paper, they are a very strong team, but somehow they just don't mesh very well, and that's causing them to lose a lot of games. I know both the coach and Woolite miss us as players or people outside of the game. I think that his problem is that in his old team with us, we were always playing around him, and now he's not being played around because he has other superstars around him. So, the crazy plays that he does, it worked with CW, but it doesn't work with Roccat because of the different playstyle.